It was a Saturday morning, the kind where the whole world felt a bit slower, like time itself had decided to take a lazy breath before jumping back into the usual hustle. The sun streamed in through the kitchen window, lighting up the mug of coffee in Eva's hands as she sat at the counter, gazing out at the quiet street. Her mind was half focused on the gentle hum of the world around her and half focused on the little French bulldog curled up on the couch in the living room. His name was Milo, and though he was only 3 months old, he already had a way of making the whole house feel like it belonged to him. Milo had been with her for about a week now, and though she adored him, his wriggly little body, his expressive eyes, and his impossibly adorable face, she'd quickly realized that being a dog mom wasn't as easy as it seemed. Sure, there were moments of pure joy, but there were also moments of chaos. She'd come home to find shoes chewed up, laundry baskets tipped over, and her favorite blankets slobbered on. And then, of course, there were the endless barking sessions every time someone walked past the house. "I'm pretty sure I've made a huge mistake," Ella muttered under her breath, taking another sip of her coffee. She loved Milo to pieces, but he was a handful. She glanced over at him, watching as he snoozed on the couch, one paw twitching as if he were chasing squirrels in his dreams. She sighed. "But you're so cute," she whispered to herself. It had only been a week, but Ella already knew that this wasn't just about having a cute little companion. It was about building a bond, understanding each other, and yes, training him. After all, she wanted Milo to grow into a well-behaved, happy little dog, and for that, she knew she had to get a handle on things. The idea of training a dog felt a little overwhelming at first, especially since Milo had more energy than she'd ever imagined a dog could have. But then it hit her. Maybe the secret was breaking it down into simple steps. Maybe that was the key. She took another sip of her coffee, a glimmer of determination in her eyes. Milo rolled over on the couch, his belly exposed, as though he were trying to entice her into a belly rub. Ella set her mug down, smiling softly. She knew he was sweet, and she wanted to be the kind of owner he deserved. That meant training, patience, and understanding. She stood up from the counter, stretching her arms above her head, and then walked over to where Milo lay. Kneeling down, she gave him a gentle scratch behind the ears. "All right, buddy. Let's do this," she said quietly, mostly to herself. Step one, she had decided, was simply getting Milo's attention. It seemed easy enough, right? She could already tell from the way he responded to the sound of her voice that he was a smart little dog. But there was a difference between knowing a dog could hear you and knowing how to command their focus. She had read somewhere that consistency was key, and she'd watched enough YouTube videos to know that it was important to keep things clear and simple for him. She walked over to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a small, squeaky toy she'd bought the day before. Milo's ears immediately perked up at the sound of the squeak. His head tilted in that way only puppies could manage. One ear flopped down, the other stood up straight. Ella grinned. "Hey, Milo! Look over here!" she said brightly, holding the toy up just high enough for him to see it. For a moment, he blinked, queasy unsure whether he should continue napping or engage in what was now a battle for the toy. Then, as though the light bulb went off in his tiny head, he jumped off the couch and trotted over to her, his little tail wagging enthusiastically. "There you go," Ella said softly as she clicked a small clicker and offered him the toy as a reward. "Good boy, Milo." She could feel her heart swell with pride. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The first step was all about getting his attention, and now that she'd achieved that, she was ready to move to the next part. But the thing was, Milo wasn't just going to be trained through treats alone. No, it would take a mix of patience, repetition, and consistency. The next day, Ella found herself in the same spot, coffee in hand, Milo on the couch. But today was different. Today she was going to tackle step 2, teaching Milo to sit. She set down her coffee cup, walked over to where Milo lay, and gently placed a treat in her hand. He looked up at her with wide eyes, those little brown circles full of curiosity. "Milo, sit," she said gently, holding the treat just above his head to guide him into position. Milo's little legs wobbled as he stood up and tried to jump for the treat, but Ella held it out of his reach. She repeated herself a little firmer this time. "Milo, sit." It took a few tries. He jumped up, he wagged his tail, and he even gave her that slightly confused look. But then, with a little guidance, he sat down. Not perfectly, but he sat, and it was progress. "Good boy," Ella said, clicking the clicker again and giving him the treat. Milo looked up at her, a little surprised, then happily chomped down on the treat. Ella let out a breath, feeling a burst of satisfaction. She had done it. He'd learned how to sit, and she'd learned that the process would take patience. Step 2 was complete. Be consistent. The next few days passed in a blur of small moments, each filled with incremental victories. Teaching Milo to stay had been harder than she thought. He was far too eager to get to the treat. But after a lot of repetition and a few playful sessions, she managed to get him to stay for a few seconds at a time. And even though he'd always get it on the first try, she noticed how much he was learning, how much he was beginning to trust her. But there were setbacks, too. There were moments when she was frustrated, like when Milo chewed up her favorite book or barked nonstop at the neighbor's dog. There were times when she thought she had made no progress at all, but then, like magic, the tiny little things he had learned clicked together. He would sit on command. He would stay when asked, even if it was just for a minute. And though he still had the occasional outburst of barking, she saw a light at the end of the tunnel. By the time a week had passed, Ella had begun to realize that training Milo wasn't just about teaching him how to sit, stay, or stop barking. It was about forming a bond, building trust between them. It was about understanding his quirks and adjusting her approach accordingly. Some days were easier than others, but every day they both got a little better at this, at being together, at communicating. She sat on the floor one afternoon, Milo curled up beside her, his soft little body warm against hers. She smiled softly, thinking about all the times he had tested her patience and all the moments he had made her heart swell with joy. And as he snoozed next to her, she whispered, "Good boy, Milo," even though he was sound asleep. It was in that moment that Ella realized the final step was just as much about letting go as it was about training. The bond between them was strong, and though training wasn't always perfect, it was exactly what they both needed. Training Milo hadn't just been about the steps, attention, consistency, commands, repetition. It had been about learning each other's rhythms, giving and taking, growing together. And so, while she had taught him to sit and stay, she had also learned how to be a patient, understanding owner, someone Milo could trust. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't always easy. But it was exactly what she needed. She leaned back, Milo's warmth against her, and knew she was ready for whatever came next in their adventure together. After all, they were a team. And that was the best step of all. And so, as we come to the end of this chapter in our training journey, I want you to remember this: it's not about perfection. It's not about the flawless sit or the perfect stay. It's about the bond that you form with your dog. It's about patience, consistency, and trust. Training your French Bulldog, or any dog for that matter, is never a straight path. There will be setbacks, there will be mistakes, and there will be days when it feels like you're starting from scratch. But remember, every little success, no matter how small, is a step forward. Every moment of patience, every time you guide them with kindness, that's a step towards something deeper, something lasting. Milo may not always follow every command perfectly, and he will definitely chew up another shoe or bark at a passing squirrel. But that's okay. Because the most important thing I've learned is this: the relationship we build with our pets, the trust we cultivate, is the real reward. They're not just dogs, they're family. They're our companions, our friends, and the ones who remind us to live in the moment. So, whether you're teaching your pup to sit, stay, or just learning how to be the best dog parent you can be, take a deep breath, enjoy the process, and embrace the imperfections. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how well they perform, it's about the love, the laughter, and the joy they bring into our lives.